Well, we wrap up our final NFL team preview with the Oakland Raiders. Dennis Allen, in his first year coaching, went 4-12. And the big question in the Raiders is who's going to start at quarterback. You have Terrell Pryor, the third-round supplemental pick of Ohio State, or former late-round pick of the Packers, Matt Flynn. Pryor made one start last year, Week 17 against the Chargers, and he had a decent game, going 14 for 30, 155 yards, which isn't great yards per attempt or completion percentage, but he had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 10 carries for 51 yards, and that could be the difference. Pryor's ability to make plays on the ground versus Flynn also ran for a touchdown that game. And in preseason, has struggled with his passing, which is to be expected, but he's created offense with his legs, which has given defenses difficulties and given him an edge over Flynn. Pryor is your big, fast, strong, prototypical option read quarterback, and that's the way of the NFL right now, so he might get the start. You have Matt Flynn, who's coming from Green Bay, which is the same place where the Raiders hired GM Reggie McKenzie, so you know he's going to have a bit of a pull for Flynn. Flynn's made 2 career starts, career 61% passer, thrown over 1,000 yards in those 2 starts, 9-5 touchdown to interception ratio, which isn't great, but he's your prototypical West Coast quarterback, which is what McKenzie planned on bringing in when he was hired as the Raiders GM. Now, the thing that could be the difference is that Flynn missed the 4th preseason game with an elbow injury. He's supposed to have tendonitis of the elbow and struggled with that the entire camp. So I expect Pryor to start game 1. I've actually expected him to win the battle, much like Russell Wilson did last year in training camp. I think it was a telling sign when Matt Flynn's offensive coordinator Joe Philbin wouldn't sign him when he got the Dolphins head coaching job and they needed a quarterback. We go to running back, where there's the ultimate, if only he was healthy player. Darren McFadden is explosive, electric, fast, powerful, everything you want in a running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he can't stay healthy. That is his big concern every single season is, can McFadden stay healthy? If McFadden could stay healthy, he could be that MVP type running back that carries the team to a playoffs, but he hasn't been able to. He hasn't been able to play over 13 games. And then they signed Rashad Jennings, who last year was horrible when Maurice Jones-Drew went down, but that was also behind a horrible Jacksonville line. But he was good for his first 2 seasons, missed the season in between. His 4th season was not good. We go to Marcel Reese, who is the most explosive fullback in the NFL, a guy who was a converted wide receiver from Washington, big body, 6'4", 240, runs a 4.4, excellent hands out of the backfield. Hugh Jackson really demonstrated his abilities by putting him out in the slot, fooling around with where he lined up, motioning him a lot. He can be a very good offensive talent. And we go now to wide receiver, where Denarius Moore is the number 1, a guy who's got some talent. He's fast, but he needs to be more consistent. He drops some balls, he runs some poor routes, he just isn't there all the time. We look at a receiver they're getting back after missing all of last year. That's Jacoby Ford. He's actually missed the last 24 of 32 games. He's a great deep threat. He had that one great game a few years ago against Kansas City when he single-handedly won them the game. Now we go to Rod Streeter, who was undrafted player at Temple, only caught 39 passes in his career at Temple. He was recruited there as a high jumper, so you know he can jump, he can run. He's 6'4", big target, but needs to improve his hands, and that's going to come with more playing experience that he didn't get at Temple. We move down the line. Jerron Kreiner was one of the top Pac-12 receivers in Arizona, but he got limited playing time last year. And then Bryce Butler, 7th-round pick out of San Diego State, another big target who will figure to get some playing time because the Raiders aren't deep and aren't talented at the position. We look at tight end, where it's an even bigger mess than at wide receiver. You have very little experience, and it's a huge camp battle. You got Richard Gordon, David Osbury, Mikel Rivera, and Nick Casa. I expect all 4 of them to make the roster, and mostly because I expect them to keep some of them for special teams, just see who's going to emerge. We go to the offensive line, where the best offensive lineman is Jared Valliere. Unfortunately for the Raiders, he tore his triceps and is out for the majority of the season. He's a big body from Hillsdale College in Division II, 6'8", and just coming into his own. Will be an elite tackle shortly. Replacing him now will be Alex Barron, who flamed out of the league as a bust of the Rams. That's going to hurt the protection. More reason to start Terrell Pryor, a guy who can escape the bad blocking. We moved to center, where they got one of their best draft picks in recent memory, Stefan Wisniewski, who is one of the best young centers in the NFL. Expect him to make a Pro Bowl or two in the near future. Go to the right side of the line, which is horrible. Mike Brazier signed for the zone blocking scheme that Greg Knapp brought in, the offensive coordinator last year. He was horrible. They've now moved back to power blocking scheme, and expect this to be Brazier's last year in silver and black. Expect him to be cut at the end of the season, as he will not be a good fit for the power blocking scheme. And at right tackle, you have an interesting camp battle. The starter for the past few years, Khalif Barnes, a decent starter, not going to fool anyone for being a Pro Bowl guy, but a guy you can get by with, versus Martik Watson out of Florida State, their second round pick, acquired as part of their trading down from the 3rd pick to 12 for the Dolphins. A guy who will be the future starter, much like Orlando Franklin in Denver. I expect Watson to be very good for years to come. And at left guard, it's Lance Nix versus Tony Bergstrom. I expect Bergstrom to win this job just because he was Mackenzie's first draft pick, and I think there's going to be some politics there. We move to the defense, where the Raiders appear to be wanting to shift to the 3-4, but are not fully committed to it right now. We look at their defensive ends. Lamar Houston is their best defensive lineman. He's great versus the run, and he can shift to the defensive tackle on pass downs. He's a big body, 6'3", 300 pounds, and very, very athletic. Can move all around the field. Has lots of a high effort player. We move to a situational pass rusher, Andre Carter is a situational pass rusher, not Jason Hunter. We'll get to him next. But Carter, he's running on fumes, not a lot left, but you can still get some good pass rushing out of him. Now we're at Jason Hunter. He would not start on a good team, but he might start on the Raiders, which just shows how bad they are, what horrible cap positioning they're in. They have to sign backups to start at backup money. We look to a pick from last year's draft. Jack Crawford struggled to see the field as a rookie. He's expected to see more time as a pass rusher this year. And we move to defensive tackle, where the story again is backups becoming starters. Pat Sims, who I believe could be a backup if they convert to a starter. He couldn't crack the rotation much in Cincinnati behind Petco and Geno Atkins, but we'll get a good opportunity in Oakland to work as a nose. They signed Vance Walker, who started 11 games, coming last year with the Falcons, and not a great starter, pretty league average. But the interesting project is Cristio Balucchio, a big body out of Georgia State, came from I believe it was Ghana, very raw. So you wonder if he can develop into a starter. Hopefully he gets some playing time and some experience, and you can see what you have, because this is not going to be a very good Raiders team. We look to the outside linebackers, where they signed Kevin Barnett. He's going to play with his brother Kalen. And Barnett is an athletic playmaker, but not an overly great player. We look to a very good backup they signed, Kaluka Maivia of the famed Maivia wrestling family, cousin of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Third round, he was a 4th round pick of the Browns a few years ago at USC, part of that Cushing, Matthews, and Ray Maluga trio. So he's had trouble seeing the field his entire career, but graded well from Pro Football Focus in limited snaps. We move to C.O. Moore, a player that the Raiders should be very excited for, coming out of UConn. We'll start at Sam, their 3rd round pick from this year's draft. Should rack up the tackles immediately. We go to the middle, where they signed Nick Roach from the Bears. He had troubles getting on the field, but a very good special teams player for the Bears. Has seen some starts as the Bear for injuries, and is moving to the middle now to replace Rolando McClain, who was cut and retired this offseason. And expect Roach to be the starter only as long as Miles Burris is out. He's on PUP following an offseason surgery. He was one of their better defenders last year, made lots of plays, and is versatile, can play any 3 of the linebacker spots. We move to the defensive backfield, where it's starting at corner, where the Raiders signed a couple guys on 1-year prove-it deals, starting with Tracy Porter. They tried signing Porter to a contract last offseason. He chose the Broncos over him. This year, the Broncos didn't want him back, so he came to the Raiders. This is a guy, he was injured for most of last year, so you you'd like him as a number 2 corner, but on the Raiders, he will be one of their top corners because they don't have a lot of depth. We look now to the other prove-it contract they signed. That's with former Cowboys first-round pick Mike Jenkins, who at times was very good on the field, but he dealt with a lot of injuries, especially over the past 2 years. His shoulder, lots of body parts just seemed like they were falling off of Jenkins. A former Pro Bowl guy, though. So you hope he can come around and start. And then they have their first-round pick, who is also an injury concern, even though he's passed all his physicals. When you have a major injury like their 12th overall pick, DJ Hayden did, you are always concerned. He ruptured a valve in his heart and nearly died. Luckily, he was rushed to hospital soon enough and had emergency surgery to save his life. We look at some important backups. Chimde Chikawa is a good backup, good special teams player. And maybe the more interesting one would be Taywan Jones. They drafted him as a running back, but R.J. McKenzie had him convert to corner this year. He was excellent on special teams his first few years in the league. He seemed to have a real passion to going down there as a gunner and making tackles. It's kind of disappointing that he was taken off running back because he had shown some bursts at time. So he's a very fast player, got some great wheels. But this is a guy I expect to be successful on the Raiders for a while, just because he can make plays on special teams and really seems to like running down the field full speed to make the play. Moved to free safety, where they signed Charles Woodson back in Silver Black, the team that drafted him way back in '98. Future Hall of Famer. What's he got left? Well, he missed half of last season, so this is an even bigger question. But he was productive when healthy, so the Raiders are hoping to get that one last great season out of the soon-to-be Hall of Famer. And then a strong safety, one of the best young safeties in the league, Tyvon Branch. Solid tackler, very athletic, can return kicks, punts, all that. And he's very active in run and pass games. We move now to special teams, where it's all about Sebastian Janikowski. The Polish power leg is just ridiculous in his length. He doesn't miss within 50 yards. And his career field goal percentage would be way higher if he didn't always attempt kicks from 58. He even attempted one from 70 yards out. Absolutely ridiculous. Didn't make it, but he does hold the league record for longest field goal. We look now to their punting battle, where it's the longtime punter Shane Leckler left. He had a down year last year. They let him walk because of cap constraints, and he signed with Houston. So they signed recently cut Vikings punter Chris Kluwe and Marquis King, who they had from last year's training camp, who went on IR. Now, King was extremely impressive in last year's preseason, punting Leckler, and he's done the same thing this year with Kluwe, even though Kluwe's having a better preseason than he played last year. I would hope that King wins the draw. He's got a much stronger leg, and he gets the better hang time, so you really hope that King wins the job. Return man, Jacoby Ford. He's elite when healthy, but again, he's had health concerns over the past 2 years. Overall, I'm expecting the Raiders to go 5-11, looking at another top 10 pick, potentially another top 5 pick, and that's the season preview for the Oakland Raiders. I hope you enjoyed watching all our season preview videos. Hopefully you liked them, subscribed to them, commented, shared them with all your friends, or just told us how bad we were in all the comments. Thanks for watching.